After years of deliberation, research, and many community meetings, the town of Mamaroneck has embarked on a reassessment of property values, the first in 40 years. Rather than being valued at a fraction of their market value, as homes have been for generations, they will now be valued at 100% of their full market value. How is this revaluation being accomplished? Why is it being done? And how will this impact homeowners and renters in the town of Mamaroneck's unincorporated area and in the villages of Larchmont and the part of the village of Mamaroneck that lies in the town of Mamaroneck? Of course, you know that about half of the village of Mamaroneck is situated in the town of Rye, the area we call Rye Neck. Rye Neck homes were revalued a few years ago by the town of Rye, with a great deal of ensuing anguish. I want to know how residents are reacting to the town of Mamaroneck's reval. My guests today are Town of Mamaroneck Supervisor Nancy Seligson and Cindy Bair, Vice President of Gar Associates. There's so much more I want to know about reval. Perhaps you do too. I'm Alice Bloom. This is A Town and Village Too. Welcome back. Nancy, Cindy, thank you for being my guest today. We've lots to talk about it. Why reval? Why now? Nancy, why don't you take that one?
Well, it's taken us about 10 years to decide to do it. We've known for a very long time in the town that because we haven't done a reevaluation since 1968, that many of the assessments of the houses, residents, commercial properties are not really up to date.
What difference does it make?
It makes a difference because it means that some people are paying more than they should and some people aren't paying their fair share. So what happens is the state of New York charges us, the legislators in the community, with fairly and equitably taxing the residents. And we knew from all of the certiorieries and claims against the taxes that they were not fair, they were not equitable, and they were not portioned out appropriately because, well, in the state of New York, your taxes are based on the assessment of your residents.
The value
of your primary residence.
Okay, when you say people apply for certiorari, explain to those who don't know what that means, what it is.
Well, that's actually the term for the commercial challenges to the reassessment, but homeowners apply for a SCAR. Can you tell me what SCAR stands for?
It's a small claims action as opposed to Article 7 would be a tax certiorari.
Okay, so what they're doing is basically challenging their tax bill this year, and you can do that every year.
You can do it every year, although it sticks for 3 years once it's been decided.
Okay, so if you've gotten a favorable ruling, in other words, your taxes came down, you're likely to stick with that for a while.
Unless you reassess. And then everything is, you start at ground zero and all those, and then you start over.
So what happens to people who received a tax deduction last year, perhaps challenged or grieved their taxes last year, got a deduction, and now they're reassessed, and now they've gotten an increase again? They can't say, no, I like the other one better. Can I keep that?
No, they can't. It starts anew. And it's anew for a very good reason, because it is more fair and equitable. There are plenty of people who were not paying their fair share of taxes, and people who are paying too much. And we don't want that in our community.
Well, I think everybody at least will express verbally their wish for fairness. Where were the greatest inequities? Who was paying too little? I mean, I don't think you're going to find very many residents of this community claiming that they're getting a buy.
That's true, because the town collects the taxes for the schools and the county and the town. So it does seem like an awful lot of money all the time, but it gets divvied out. And there were homes in every single area of the town of Mamaroneck, including the 2 villages, that experienced reassessment that changed the value of their home to a much higher value.
Well, but which were the homes that were more likely to have been underassessed?
You want to address that?
A lot of, and just to back up a little bit, properties appreciate and depreciate differently. So over time, you know, certain areas, certain parts of the community, or certain locations based on schools or the water might become more popular than others. So therefore, they might have saw an increase in market value, while some other areas saw more of a less of an increase, or maybe a decrease.
Well, areas come in and out of favor. I mean, we all think we live in a terrific area, and it is a terrific area. But you mean a neighborhood will become more shishi, more desirable?
More desirable, and the sales will tell us that. You know, waterfront anywhere you go is very, very popular. You can't make any more waterfront. So the waterfront here saw probably one of the largest increases, all of the waterfront, because the majority of the properties were, they appreciated faster over the years than maybe some other properties in the town.
Is that so, even in light of the terrible storms we've had?
Surprisingly, and when the Sandy hit in October, most of those renovations have been completed. And if they hadn't, there would be a permit for that, and we wouldn't assess them fully until that work was complete.
When you look for a home's value, explain, if you can, Cindy, and maybe this is one you should address, how you do comparables. I mean, it's rare to have two houses that are truly alike. And yet some people who have, we'll say, let me say a 1970s split level on the same street and get vastly different assessments.
There's a lot that the sales will dictate to us. Yes, style of the home is important, but you're looking at age, condition. Sometimes it really doesn't matter. We don't really manipulate the market, we just report it. So as we looked at all the sales that occurred over the last 2.5 years, and we, based on neighborhoods, based on locations, and sometimes it didn't matter whether it was a split or it was an old style. They were all kind of in the same range because somebody wanted to live on that street, and it didn't make a difference what style the house was. Sometimes it does. So it is an art. It's not an exact science. So there is a lot of judgment, by appraisers. And one of the compliments to the town that I'd like to say is that they insisted on having New York State licensed and certified appraisers work on the data collection and work on the values, which gives you a better quality end product. So the appraisers that worked on the project are very familiar with sales and appraisals in Westchester, and specifically here in Mamaroneck.
So those appraisers are not employed by you,
they are for the project, but we found local folks with local knowledge, in this area in Westchester County that do a lot of appraisals for bank, for financing, that type of thing. So they were very familiar.
I wanted to point out also that mass appraisal, which is what you do in a reassessment situation, is different than a sale appraisal, a resale. Most of us are most familiar with your friendly broker coming in and really looking at every single thing in your home and giving it a very, very specific value, whereas mass appraisal is not done in the same kind of specific way. And I think that is something people aren't used to. So
I think there's a lot of confusion about that. All right, as long as we're talking about sales, some people's homes or a home next door has sold in the very recent past. So you have an actual value. Somebody was willing to spend, we'll say $1 million, we'll just make up a number. But then you have a street where nothing is sold in a period of time. What do you do? How do you?
Well, a neighborhood just isn't the immediate street. It would be a grouping of streets of similar type properties. The waterfront, where there's water access, water view, you have to look at all of those factors. But it's not just the street you live on. It may be similar streets with similar characteristics that you could compare it to. But you wouldn't want to compare a quiet street with a busy road. You're not going to compare it to something on the Boston Post Road or Mamaroneck Ave to something off those streets.
Okay, so that's a difference. Would proximity to the water by two houses make a difference? Someone who can see it through the corner window of the third floor, as opposed to someone who has a real water view?
Correct.
Access to the water?
Logic would say that would sell a little stronger because you could have a better view to the water. If you have access, that really, would change the value. And again, we worked with the local real estate community, the realtors. We spent some time with them as part of our research to find out, what's going on, what's been the trends, what's been happening. And we also do a lot of analysis on the sales. We just don't accept a sale price as is. We have to investigate it, make sure they're all, valid, clean sales, no foreclosures, no estate sales.
Arm's length.
Arm's length transactions between unrelated buyer and seller. And also, you know, a house can sell for a very high price that isn't really typical. We've got to find out why. Maybe it was completely renovated. That doesn't mean that every property on that street would then get that high value. So I get asked a lot of questions about age and condition. There's a lot of old homes here. And there's a lot of areas where folks are buying the older homes, tearing them down, putting brand new house. And the homeowner with the older home said, well, you're comparing me to that brand new house. Well, no. Because if somebody was interested in buying your home, they wouldn't be looking at a brand new home. It just happens to be right next door, which is great for the neighborhood, but it isn't a direct comparable. You want to compare like properties.
I want to get back to the comment you made about subjectivity, that this being is more of an art than a science, and I think that's what's a little hard to wrap our heads around. This area, the Larchmont Mamaroneck area, was always treasured, I guess, for the older homes, and people moved here for that charm. It seems that the sentiment has changed, or at least it seems to some of us that people are, as you say, tearing down houses, ones that formerly would have been renovated, updated for sure, but building a new version of that older house. Does that change the value of the older houses that exist here? Does that make them less cherished?
Not necessarily, but as I said earlier, someone that's interested in a brand new house in an older neighborhood is going to look at those new houses that were tear downs and rebuilt.
So would that make that new house in the neighborhood receive a higher assessment than the old house?
Typically it should, because it's new. Everything's new, and there's no renovation that's needed. If you have a home sitting next door that's older and it needs not just maintenance, but it needs updating, and you obviously have to put money into it, the pricing would be different if they sold, or should be different. Sometimes...
Isn't that a subjective thing, a house that needs renovation? There are people who live with a 30-year-old bathroom or kitchen and like it, and
that's fine.
And it functions.
Right.
But they would say, my house doesn't need a renovation.
Then they should be assessed less than that brand new house. Or, you know, but a lot of factors. Is it bigger? Do they have more lot size? Do they have more amenities? Even then, some of the brand new houses have a smaller footprint. Maybe they don't have as much of a yard. So there's a lot. That's part of what this informal review process that we're going through now with the residents is to talk about those characteristics and have a conversation to say, I don't think you considered this enough. Okay. Or maybe we didn't get into the property.
Right. You know, I want to talk about that first, and then I really do want to go through the review process and what people are entitled to do and how it works. You offered every resident the opportunity to have someone come in, an appraiser, I guess, come in and look at their property. How many people, or what percentage of the...
About 40%
permitted someone in. What was the resistance, do you think?
A lot of factors, I think. We don't find a great rate of interiors when we do these types of projects. A lot of it is...
there's a great rate of people who let you in. You don't usually find people who welcome you.
that are willing. Some is, I don't want you to see what I have. Some is more just, you know, from a security issue. Maybe folks aren't home. Maybe there's, you know, someone watching children and they don't want you. And we did take appointments in those circumstances too. So if
we tried to encourage it though in the town, because we had great confidence in GAR, and we really felt that would give us the most accurate reflection of what was out there and the most accurate assessment of each property.
But 60% of the residents didn't let you in. So how does that affect your ability to appraise the reassess the properties?
Again, as Nancy said, it is mass appraisal, and with good sales database and using professional appraisers, you can get within the range. You know, you should be, yes, do we not see every interior, you know, characteristic? No. And for those folks that have maybe some inferior conditions or not updated, you know, they want to keep the 30-year-old bathroom, they may let us in now and say, now I need you to see this because I didn't let you in the first time, which we're getting those requests too.
Did you make assumptions about properties based on whether someone let you in or didn't let you in?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot that a professional appraiser can tell from the outside of the property. And, you know, if it looks like it's been well maintained, not condition. You know, that a roof's been put on in the last 40 years, some windows maybe have been replaced, but we're not going to assume that everybody's HGTV'd the interior of their house. It's a 1920s old style house with normal maintenance. that's what we're going to assume. The reality is the folks that have upgraded and renovated extensively, we're never going to get into those properties.
So you make an assumption that
Sure.
if someone didn't let you in and it looks like a very well-maintained property, chances are their renovations were top.
And if we're wrong, if we made the wrong assumption, this is the time that you'd want to say, we need you to come in, because I think you assumed that certain
Let's
things.
talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people who are unhappy with the assessment they've received. What's the procedure for challenging?
There is something called the informal interview process now. And since the disclosure notices went out with the information on the new reassessment value in the very beginning of March, GAR Associates has been hosting people in the town center on a regular basis.
You make an appointment.
Exactly. And it's about 15 or 20 minutes usually. And you can go in and actually discuss if you are not understanding what the disclosure notice really says, or you can also disagree and tell the representatives from GAR what they think it should be or why it isn't correct. And I'm very happy that we have this time because it's really the stage to get it all worked out. It's not a formal process, meaning it isn't a formal grievance at this point. There's no law or legal process to it. It's just the information so that we have better information and improved information on the assessments.
Okay, so there's a window of time when people request
April
this.
16th.
Okay,
Today is April 9th.
Okay, well, we're going to do our best to get this on the air immediately. We'll see what we can do. Okay, that's to request an informal meeting to challenge the reassessment.
But most people have made appointments. We've had close to 900 people that have signed up already, which is about 11% of all the properties in the town.
That's a lot.
So it seems like a lot, but the Office of Real Property Tax Services usually says anywhere from 15 to 20% or greater in times when there hasn't been a reassessment in quite a while.
Now, for this informal meeting, what must a homeowner bring with him or her?
Typically, we ask for, there is a review form. It's not mandatory. It's kind of there as a worksheet for them that they can download off the website or pick up at the libraries. But any information that's going to give us an opportunity to relook at it. Coming in and saying, I don't like the taxes isn't really going to help us take another look at it. But if you didn't have an interior the first time and you'd like us to do an inspection, if it recently sold, we wouldn't have had that sale in the initial process, so we could bring your sales contract. If someone had an appraisal done for financing or home equity, they can get a copy of that from the bank. They're entitled to it. They can bring that and have us take a look at it. They don't need to go get an appraisal at this point. It's their option if they want to, but you know, if they have one that's recent and they want us to look at it, we'd be happy to look at it.
Does a homeowner need to be represented for this informal meeting?
No.
So they don't need an appraiser, they don't need a lawyer. No. How about some people are more sophisticated at being able to make an argument and be able to present documentation? Is that more compelling than someone who comes in and can simply talk to you?
Not at all. We'll take notes, we'll listen. We ask for photographs. If they want to take photographs that are dated, they can bring us those. Any information, and as Nancy said, if they just want a better understanding about how their value for their particular property.
I think comparables. This is the hard thing for people to wrap their heads around. Now, do you supply them with the information about comparable homes?
We'll show them the comparables that were used. We've got on the website, the town put up a wonderful interactive website. They can search for sales. They can look at all the sales that we used. Of course, the local real estate professionals have wonderful multiple listing information available. So there is a lot of data out there that they can access.
Okay, so people have made an appointment, they've had their 20 minutes with you, then what happens?
We go back and do some research. They're asking us, they're not going to get a decision at that meeting because we need to go do some homework. Maybe we need to do the inspection. And everyone that filed for an informal review will get a decision notice in May, whether there was a change or not. So then they'll know if they want to go on to the grievance process. Well, we have to wait till, I would say mid to late May, because we have to wait till we wrap up all the informals and we finish up all the determinations. So I would say mid to, second to third week of May, they should receive something. Then they can make a decision if they want to go on to the formal grievance process, which is June 18th. And there'll be information about that on the website, in the mailings, with the decision notice. So
must they be represented for a formal grievance?
Technically, no. No, they can do it themselves.
And the grievances that we have endured, I will say, throughout the past decade and more, have been so heavy and so high that the town and collectively the community with the 2 villages and the school district have been not collecting or returning millions of dollars a year. And we are hoping that by having an accurate assessment done now, that we will be able to defend our role in a way that we will not have to settle every single case and be able to say, no, we have faith in this assessment and we're willing to stick by it. Because right now, at every single board meeting you'll see, and even in the villages as well, that we are approving any number of certiorari, which are these, those are the commercial claims. And it adds up to so much money.
About how much does the town return every year to taxpayers?
I think it was $500,000.
So that money comes out of the budget.
Well, actually, it just gets redistributed. The rest of the taxpayers will have to pick that up. And that's the problem. So if you lower someone's assessment through a grievance process, that burden's got to go somewhere, and it has to be picked up by someone
other
else.
Taxpayers.
Because you still have to collect the same levy.
I'm trying to understand how a municipality can budget. If we just make up a number. You have a $30 million budget. Maybe that's completely ridiculous.
$32 million.
Oh, right, close. I guess I read my papers well enough. And you think you have $30 million to spend or to apportion, for services and other responsibilities in the town, and then you wind up giving away or giving back $500,000.
Well, that's one of the reasons you also have to have a great surplus or fund balance in the community, because we know that we can make it up in the following year, but you have to be able to cover it.
How many other communities in Westchester have reassessed?
Oh, Pelham did, the town of Rye.
Yes.
Scarsdale has just embarked on one. And
the Village of Bronxville.
Thank you, Village of Bronxville. So, not that many. And
there had been some talk a while ago about waiting for the county to do
yes,
it,
yes.
Thinking that would be a little more efficient.
Yes, and unfortunately that never came to fruition, because we did think through an economy of scale it would be the best way to go. Although doing it this way, we had great control over the process, working very closely with our contractors so that we were able to maintain a level of excellence in it, I think, that really will make a difference.
Cindy, has GAR done any of those other reassessments in Westchester?
We have not. The Pelham project was done several years ago, and they was done pretty much in-house, I believe, with the assessor at the time and some subcontracted work. The others, different contractors for both Bronxville and for Rye. So no, this was our first in Westchester.
Has any community ever embarked on a reassessment and said, I don't think so, we're going to back down? This is because I'm hearing some unhappiness amongst some residents, and I don't know if that will persist or whether that's just the initial blow to getting a larger tax bill.
It's a very, very tough political decision to make, because it is a scary process for residents. It does have the potential of raising certain people's taxes, obviously lowering certain people's taxes, and some stay the same. So it was a very, very difficult decision to make. But the more you look at it and the more you see and pay out those claims and certiorari, the more you realize that it is the fair and equitable thing to do.
It equalizes things for sure. For people who receive a big hit, is there any opportunity to phase in that new tax burden?
There really isn't. There is something on the law books, and it's never been done in New York State because it's very difficult to do. But the problem lies in, what about the folks that saw a decrease? And they'd have to be phased in as well, and I don't think those folks would want their decreases phased in. So you can't just phase the increases in and not the decreases.
Is there any relief, though, for someone who's received a huge amount? First of all, is there a limit as to what the total increase might be?
No. Think about it. It's based on the value of your residence. So, if you were taxed very low or too low, the assessed too low, you know, the reality is that you actually got by for however long you did, paying less taxes than you actually were obligated to.
But there are some people who bought older homes with the expectation that they would enjoy lower taxes because they were living in an older home that they had to modify to bring up to standards. Is that a realistic expectation, or do people just justify their lower taxes that way?
Market value is market value. I know everybody wants to talk about the taxes, but really the job of the assessor and of this project was to create fair and equitable property assessments. Unfortunately, the taxes are, you know, a part of the equation, but as I said earlier, even for those that saw increases and substantial ones, there were folks that saw substantial decreases. And they're very happy that it's finally, you know, straightened out.
They feel justified.
The town did, of course, inquire as to whether we could phase it in or have some sort of transition. And the law that allows it is so complicated and so not straightforward that we were counseled by everyone to not even try to do it.
I'm just thinking of someone who's lived in a house for 50 years and bought that house for, I don't know, $50,000 at the time of in the 70s when the oil crisis hit and nobody wanted the big houses in the manor and whatever. It was a great buy then, and now, of course, it's enormously valuable.
But everything has gone up. I mean, it's, yes, it's very valuable. And as I said, in a lot of the workshops, we conducted over 10 workshops and saw close to 800 people that, you know, their taxes went up and the assessment didn't change in the last 40 years because it, you know, function of the levy. Right. So everything has, on the, you know, everybody wants a high value when they're selling, and they want the equity in their property, but, you know, they don't want to face it.
And this is the system in the state of New York. I mean, it just is the system. We can't change that.
Correct.
And I just want to make the point that the town of Mamaroneck is not collecting or going to receive any additional taxes because of this reassessment. It is what we call revenue neutral. It is just redistributing the assessment and therefore the taxes equitably.
Has that been the case throughout other reassessments? Nobody's ever really achieved any.
And there's that's not the reason you do it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What about the marketability? Have you seen any changes in desirability of homes in communities that have reassessed, or diminished desirability?
I haven't. I don't know if...
And we haven't heard that either in any of the 3 municipalities we know in the county who have done it.
When people buy homes, do you know whether they care, or whether, you know, most people are cognizant of whether or not there's been a reassessment?
Sure. There has been in this community now. There's been a lot of interest in it, of course, because people are concerned about what their taxes will be. But, you know, we find also, I know, and you must hear as well, that the real estate market is booming in our community right now. And I think that's a function of Wall Street as well.
And I think we get asked, too, if, you know, taxes can be regressive on a sale price. And, you know, we'll have to see how that plays out. We can't predict what that's going to be. As sales start turning over this summer and the fall, and people know that there's going to be different, you know, taxing maybe on a particular parcel, that may affect it, it may not. We've done several communities, hundreds across New York State, and I've never seen droves of people move out or the market take a dive because of a reassessment. We haven't seen that. And I also want to encourage people that to make sure they have all the exemptions that they have available to them. They should check with the assessor's office. That is somewhat of a relief for some folks. They're due by May 1st, so they do want to check with the assessor's office and make sure they have every exemption they're entitled to.
Okay, so there's lots of information out there.
Yes.
And when will this is the last question, we're out of time. When will the process be over?
The people will see the new taxes in the 2014 roll.
Okay.
It ends with the September 15th final assessment roll.
Okay, so anyone who has an interest in challenging their reassessment must act quickly. They can call the town for assistance, I am sure, the assessor's office, if they are struggling to get through the paperwork or having some difficulty.
And we have a helpline that's been available to...
Okay, maybe we'll get that number up if we can.
And on the website.
It's
you can go to
the
the town website and find the reassessment project. There's lots of information.
Well, thank you both for being my guests. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers have as well. Nancy, Cindy, I hope we'll have you back again next year, and we'll talk about how this is all over. We'll have a drink together, I'm sure.
Thanks.
I'm Alice Bloom. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.